Okay, so this is 2-7, prove angle pair relationships. Now, please understand that we're still going to work with 2-6 lesson as well as 2-5, dealing with those proofs. 2-7 is just an expansion of that proofs because now we're looking at angles that we had learned in chapter 1, supplements, complements, linear pairs, right angles, as well as vertical angles. Now in this PowerPoint, I'm just giving you the theorems. We're not doing any proofs on this PowerPoint. We're going to do that all in class. So I'm just giving you theorems and postulates to copy. The first one is right angle congruence theorem. This one I always think should just be a postulate. Remember, theorems have to be proven, postulates don't. That is, all right angles are congruent. I mean, if angle 1 is a right angle and angle 2 is a right angle, we know they're going to be congruent because they're both 90-degree angle. But I guess it's the term all. All right angles are congruent. Congruent supplements theorem. If two angles are supplementary to the same angle or congruent angles, then the two angles are congruent. Now take a moment to copy that down because I'm going to bring you a picture and an example using that picture. So again, if two angles are supplementary to the same angle or congruent angles, then the two angles are congruent. So here's a picture. Notice there's three angles. Now according to this theorem, it would state this. If angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary, angle 2 and angle 3 are supplementary, then angle 1 has to be congruent to angle 3. They're both using angle 2. It would be like if I said angle 1 is 70 degrees, angle 2 then has to be 110 because they're supplementary. Well, if angle 2 and 3 are supplementary, and angle 2 is 110, then angle 3 has to be 70 to equal 180. So they're both 70, angle 1 and 3. Remember, you can always pause if you need to. Now this is just like the other, but it's the complementary one. Congruent complementary theorems. If two angles are complementary to the same or congruent angles, then the two angles are congruent. Again, if two angles are complementary to the same or congruent angles, then the two angles are congruent. So here's this picture. So this is saying if angle 4 and angle 5 are complementary, and angle 5 and angle 6 are complementary, then 4 has to be congruent to 6. Just like the supplementary one. Let's say 4 is 30 degrees. Well, that means if it's complementary to 5, 5 has to be 60. That will add up to equal 90. Well, if 5 and 6 are complementary, and now we know 5 is 60 degrees, then angle 6 has to be 30 degrees. So 4 and 6 both have 30-degree measure. They're congruent to each other. Again, if you need more time, please pause so you can copy this. Linear pair postulate. Now this one does not have to be proven. If two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. We learned that in chapter 1. Two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. Remember, this is not the converse. We cannot say if they are supplementary, then they form a linear pair, because supplementary angles do not have to be adjacent. So it just has to be if two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. You must start with a linear pair before it's supplementary. So here's a picture just to clarify in case you can't remember what linear pair looks like. Angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair, so angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. Again, if you need a moment to finish copying, please pause. Vertical angles congruence theorem. Now, we used vertical angles in chapter 1. We just didn't talk really about their measure. We just identified vertical angles. Now, with this, we're going to be doing not just using it for proofs and proving, but we're also going to be using for solving. But we'll do this all in class. All I'm asking you to do is copy this down. Vertical angles are congruent. Notice it does not use the word all vertical angles, because then that would mean every single vertical angle is congruent. Well, that's not correct. It's pairs of vertical angles are congruent. So here's a picture. So angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. Angle 2 and angle 4 is another pair of vertical angles. So 1 is congruent to 3, 2 is congruent to 4. They're equal measures. They have the same measures. So algebraically, if I tell you you have vertical angles, or if you see in the picture, you'll be able to set them equal to each other. If you need more time to copy, please hit pause.